back to Board Game Co. I'm Professor Meg.
And I'm Alex.
And today we're reviewing My City.
My City is a 2 to 4 player tile laying game designed by Reina Canisia, put out by Cosmos, in which players, and it's a legacy game, it's also a legacy game, in which players are going to be placing tiles onto the board across 24 chapters of play, which is where I'm going to go ahead and teach you how the first chapter operates, and then we'll loosely, with no spoilers, talk about things, well, we'll figure it out.
Slight spoilers, maybe.
No spoilers. Maybe spoilers. We'll warn you if the spoilers.
You'll know that there are envelopes you open with surprises inside. That's alone a spoiler.
Yeah, you have to, as soon as you buy the game, you're going to notice that.
Yeah.
We have all these envelopes, and they're there as soon as you buy the game, and there's not much you can do to stop it unless you don't buy the game, in which case the spoilers don't really matter, do they? In any case, this is a 2 to 4 player tile laying game. Players are going to have their own board, they're going to have their pile of tiles, and every single round, you're going to go ahead and flip over a card. Now, you start at 10 points, but now Meg and I have to go ahead and find that piece. Let's go ahead and do this over here. Let's find a piece.
Oh gosh, I found mine faster.
I found mine, and you're going to place it onto the board. Now, your first piece must be touching the river in some way. I'll go ahead and place mine like so. Yeah, I'm usually this fast. Okay, I do it. Boom. Okay, great. We're going to go ahead and flip another card. And now we have that piece to go through.
Gosh, we're like live playing?
And this is going to be the first way you start playing through My City, because this is where, as soon as you're done,
I'm not. This is a hard decision.
You gotta work our way through it. Now you have to place all subsequent pieces have to be touching a piece that's already been placed. That's the challenge over there. We're going to place out one more piece, and then we're going to call it a day.
Did you say what happens if you pass?
Oh, I did not say. Oh, that's a good point. You know what? Honestly, I'm having such a hard time placing this piece that I'm going to go ahead and go down a point. In general, whenever you do not want to place a piece, you'll lose a point instead. And at the end of the full round, when all of the cards have been dealt and all of the pieces have been gone through, you'll go ahead and score your board, and you're going to score for the amount of empty spaces. Each empty space, non-covered, is going to be worth -1 point. That does not include mountains. It does not include forests. Each sets of rocks, you're going to see they come in sets of 2. They're all worth -2 points if they are not covered. So ideally, you want to try to cover those sets of rocks as much as possible.
I covered mine.
I didn't cover mine because I'm just trying to figure out how to do this over here. There we go. I covered mine, but I unfortunately left a spot that's going to be empty over there. And then trees you specifically want to leave uncovered because trees are going to be worth points. In this case, 2 points for a set of 2 trees. And then lastly,
you can cover them if you need to.
You can cover them if you need to. Lastly, you cannot cross the river with a single piece. So, for example, this piece can go on this side. It can go on this side. It cannot cross the river in a single motion. Those are going to be the rules you start off with, and then at the end of the scenario, the most minor spoilers, you'll start permanently modifying your board. Effectively, you're going to get points for winning. You'll mark off little check boxes over here. I believe it's 2 points the first. It depends on the player count.
Yeah.
I believe it's 2 points or 0 points in a 2-person game. In multiple, if there's more players, then it's like 2, 1, and 1 and 0. This is where you get certain legacy marks that will give you points towards your eventual conclusion. Whoever has the most of these pips at the end of 24 rounds of play will win. But there's a whole lot more going on. There's not just this board. There's things that will unlock. There's stickers you'll unlock to kind of compensate the winners or losers, making it slightly more so that you have slight advantages for depending on how you play the scenario. But that's effectively what happens in the first game out of 24 games of My City. From there, no spoilers so far. We'll warn you if I start getting spoilers. From there, you're going to evolve rules throughout the course of 8 chapters of play. In each chapter, you're going to open up a new envelope. That envelope is going to have 3 scenarios in it, and small rules and adjustments you're going to pick up across those scenarios. So it starts off, that most basic game that I just showed you, that's just game 1. After game 1, new rules get added. There's more reasons or incentives to do certain things, which I'm not going to get into because I want to avoid spoilers for you. But and
I believe every single chapter adds something.
I believe it does. There's going to be, each chapter tends to have a little bit more going on. Is there more than every chapter? Every single scenario.
Every scenario adds something.
Every one of the 20, I believe so. Every one of the 24 scenarios you play across.
There's a little bit around a certain part that I'm not positive, but I think it does.
The changes you encounter are sometimes large, impactful changes that totally change the way you engage with the game, and sometimes there's a small, tiny adjustment that will have a small impact on your game. Most of those changes are going to be permanent, that once you uncover them, they're going to be permanently in play with you, so you're effectively just adding rules as you go through it. Once in a while, some things go away or change in different ways, but effectively what starts off as a very simple Polyomino laying game becomes a much more complicated structure of trying to take into account 15 different motivations as you place different things onto a board that's constantly evolving, onto a board that is yours. More and more so, this board is going to be yours. Pieces are going to be yours. Permanent consequences are going to be in play because that's the nature of it being a legacy game.
And I do appreciate with the different episodes, like the progression of it makes sense. That they introduce new things to you in a small enough way that, you'll have a new thing added, and then they'll add a new mechanic to that new thing in a future scenario, and that's kind of how they start building off of it. So they'll kind of build the game bigger, and then use that to make more mechanics added to it that I really enjoy.
Yeah. Yep, and that's kind of all I can really like. It's so complicated.
That's all I can say.
It's all I can say. Usually when I give a review, I want to tell you as much as I possibly can.
So I
but
guess
in this
a
case,
little bit more about the gameplay that is just a little bit different with this than some Polyomino games is that you cannot invert these pieces.
You're right. Yes.
That's something that's very important, and it's a big part of the puzzle. So that's something that is different that players that are used to things like patchwork, you can flip and patchwork.
Most games you can
Baron
flip
Park,
and
things
rotate.
like that. Oops, I just moved that.
Yep.
So that is one thing about it. You cannot flip the polyominoes. So these Z-type shapes, you're kind of stuck with them always being like this, which is tricky, and it's something to kind of work your brain around when you're learning this game, but then you can get used to it.
Yeah, you can rotate, just no flipping.
No flipping. There's nothing.
Yeah.
You
on the
can't.
outside.
They're like,
But that's all we can kind of go into as far as this game goes without starting to get into spoiler territory. That's how you play the base intro scenario. Rules will be added and evolved.
I guess a little bit more pre-spoiler, just for anyone that like might cut out before we start spoiling.
Spoiling stuff?
We might a little bit.
I wasn't planning on spoiling stuff.
Oh, I thought we were going to a little bit.
I wasn't gonna, but we can talk.
Okay. So a thing about this is it is a game for 2 to 4 players. So if you do play this with just 2 people, you can play it through twice. You are going to be putting stickers on, so you're permanently marking the game that you won't be able to play it after.
Well, in theory, there's you can play forever.
You can't play the experience again. You can't go through the chapters again. But if you usually play with just one other person, you can play through it twice, which is really nice.
Yeah, especially because this game is surprisingly affordable. This game's like often like I think.
That was my other thing.
Yeah.
Was I was gonna ask you the price.
A price point does vary, but the most recent time I saw it available was like $25, and I've seen it in that range on a regular basis. So $25 for 24 plays for 4 players and 48 plays for 2 is certainly not a small amount. Well, it certainly is a small amount per player. All of that. But anyways, we're going to go ahead and dive into the review, starting off with ease of play. Ease of play on this is a very simple rulebook to get into because it teaches you those rules one at a time, and the rules usually are fairly easy to pick up and play. Individual chapters tend to run in the range of around half an hour per chapter, giving you, again, 24 plays. It's going to be 12 hours of play with very easy 12 hours, again, broken up into 24 different situations, or if you want, you could just sit down and play, five games in a row and call it, a 2.5 hour game night, and that's fine too. I
would say for ease of play, the only 2 things are you can't flip the polyominoes and remembering that. And what was my other ease of play thing? Just if you play it multiple times, you can kind of put yourself into a tricky situation because you expect certain rules to be coming and they haven't happened yet. So that's something too, is when you replay to remember to reset yourself to the base rules again. Yeah,
that does happen. This is a game I've gone through a few times, and you frequently will be applying this too.
Oh no, is the other one still coming?
No. For the ones literally the first scenario. The thing I try to do in the first scenario is only eligible from the second scenario onwards, but I start doing it in the first scenario.
Yeah.
Anyways, that's basically that, which means time for review, starting off with what do you like about the game?
Oh my gosh, I think this game is so enchanting. I think the thing that I love the most is the surprises and the stickers and that element of it. I love when you can change games and really customize it. Spoiler alert, and I guess this is one thing we didn't super show, but on the boards, and I don't know if you guys can really tell, but there's little dots only on some of them. So that's going to be places where you will be able to place secret kind of things later. And a big part of the strategy of playing through it is the things that you gain for winning or losing. And, because sometimes there's a bit of a catch-up mechanic that the loser gets a bit of a boon. But where you're placing certain things and the choices that you make, I think it's really fun, not just the actual gameplay of each scenario placing the polyominoes, but building your master board for what it'll be at the end. Yeah. There's a lot that you'll end up changing on this board.
Yeah, for me, My City is one of the most accessible legacy games out there, both in terms of price point, in terms of ease of play, in terms of the general rules complexity. There's a lot of things that make this an easy game to dive into. I like polyomino games in general, and I like the fact that this builds upon a set of rules, again, scenario after scenario after scenario. And one of the things that's nice about it is I never really feel there's a strong runaway leader problem. There will be times where a player might be getting ahead, but frequently I found there is a back and forth, and there are so many different ways of getting those little check marks as you play through it, that throughout the course of the game, you might find a player who seems to be getting a handle on things, but as the game progresses, it tends to come down to a very close game at the very end of it, and it's just
I think part of that is that throughout the different arcs, there's different types of mechanics that are introduced. So some people, I think, just do better with different arcs that, someone might end up catching up because they know how to use a certain type of thing that changes.
Yeah, it's hard to talk with those points. There's mini stuff. There's things you can do. There's things you do to get points in the game. But yeah, it's fairly variable. It builds on itself nicely. It gives you a lot of those a lot of gameplay for an incredibly accessible price point, and it's replayable enough, not in terms of the finished scenario and continue to replay that, but it's just an easy game to dive into again and again because of just how it's almost like a filler legacy game, which is a weird concept to have, but price point wise and chapter wise and content wise, I think it's almost a filler legacy game, which is just a overall rewarding experience. And again, it keeps it keeps the freshness of play because you're constantly playing new things. Every scenario is like another rule, another rule, another rule. Then you reset and start again, another rule, another rule, another rule, and you go through that arc in a very enjoyable way.
And it plays so quickly that I find that it's one of those that if you do lose, a new mechanic is added, you get the catch-up mechanic because you lost, and then you're like, let's play again, let's go again. I was, especially when you lose by like 1 or 2 points, it's like, let's try harder.
Speaking of which, as far as things we don't like, I'm going to start off with one, which is, or at least for myself, I find that there are 1 or 2 pivotal scenarios in my city that it's almost better to lose those scenarios. There's just 1 or 2. I'm thinking of specifically 2, there might be more, but I'm thinking of 2 specific scenarios that if you get up to those, it is almost better to lose that scenario because the catch-up mechanic you get is a fairly large boon that lasts for a while, that I don't like that aspect. And it's something that I've looked around, I've seen other people agree with this. I don't know if it's like, universally acclaimed or agreed upon, but like there's 1 or 2, and I don't like the fact that internally, I'm still going to try to win because I feel like I have to, but I feel I'm playing suboptimally by trying to win those 2 specific scenarios.
I highly agree, and I know which ones you're talking about. And Alex and I are currently playing through with Gray, who was a guest on one of our live shows. And I lost both of those.
And 2 times WSBG winner.
And 2 times WSBG winner. We love you, Gray.
You lost both of those?
I lost both of those.
Intentionally?
I got no.
Oh. Okay.
No, I was trying. You'll see
That's
it was close, but I got both of those things.
Nice. So you're well set up for success.
Yeah.
But that's the problem. And so I've never walked into those scenarios once trying to lose them. I still will try to win every single scenario.
That's a good pen.
It's just, well...
I'm well set up for success.
You're well set up. Yeah, you are. But
well set up.
Well set up. Oh, that's funny. That's funny. Those who know, those know. Anyways, the only other thing I really don't like is that there's some specific scenarios in the game, and this happens more towards the end, I guess, where I feel there are certain scenarios where I didn't love some of the mechanical changes that were introduced. I think most of the way through, without getting heavily into it, there's like a bunch of arcs and things that happen, and there's one specific point where it's hard to be critical without getting into it. I'm not going to get into it. I'll say that there's so many different things going on that there may be a possibility that some of them do or don't resonate with you as they're introduced.
Now, for those that do know my city, could you say about how far through?
I
think
think
it was toward the end.
I think it's towards the end. If I'm not, I don't even know. It might be like the last few. Honestly, the end game is one of my problems with it as well. I find the very, very last scenario too also are slightly fiddly. I think overall I very much enjoyed the experience. Don't get me wrong. Overall, I think it's excellent. I think it's great. There's just these small changes that happen along the way where I liked some more than others. It's hard to get into specifically.
And I will say for me, I've played through this 2 or 3 times now, and I've only played through a finished game on BGA. I've started the physical game as well, but that one isn't finished. So for me, I haven't gotten to open the actual envelopes for future pieces and things that get added. So for like the quality side of that and how it actually physically plays, I actually don't know. I haven't gotten that far in the physical version, so there is that, but there's no issues really?
No, I mean...
all the stickers place well and
everything
stuff?
places well. I'd say one thing that I thought of but didn't really want to critique BGA, but one of the things I like about playing in person over Board Game Arena is the fact that playing in Board Game Arena, I find managing all your pieces is harder, versus playing in person, I'm often like, I'll need that yellow, and I put it off to the side. I'm like, I'll need that blue later, because that's going to fit perfectly over there. I tend to put pieces off to the side as I'm playing through it, which means when I get up to that piece, it's off to the side, as opposed to when I'm playing online, very often I'm like, oh yeah, that yellow's going to fit perfectly there, and 2 seconds later we flip over a yellow, and I'm like, okay, great, we're going to put it over there, and I completely forget.
I
that
agree.
happens a lot online, but not in person.
Yeah, that was something I really liked playing in person, was because I started online, and then playing in person, I was like, wow, this is much nicer to organize for yourself.
But yeah, anything else you don't like, or final thoughts?
My final thoughts, I got addicted to this game. This is, full disclosure, Cosmos has no idea that I'm saying this. They don't know anything about this. But I got addicted to this. I played it through like 3 straight times on BJ, like very, very quickly. So just to speak for like how fun this game can be, like it literally did that to me. It got me hooked for quite some time, and then I took a little bit of a break, and now I'm back. So that's just how much it excites me. I think that speaks on its own.
Yeah, for me, this is definitely a game experience I very much enjoy. I think it is on the lighter side, which is something to be mindful if you're diving into it. But I will say, if you are someone diving into this, do not judge the game based on the first scenario. know, I'd say get like 4 games deep before you kind of get a sense of where the game is going for you. It still might be an experience that's too light for what you're looking for, but for me, it really does feel like Gateway Legacy, or what was the other word I used? Filler Legacy. It's a filler Legacy game. I really enjoy it. I have a lot of fun with it, both playing it on BGA and playing in person. And again, you get so much money out of that box, so much gameplay for the money out of that experience, that I really think this is one of the best Legacy games I would recommend to people.
Play it.
Rating-wise for me, I don't know if you're going to rate it or not, but rating-wise for me, I'm giving it a 4.5 out of 5. That's not based purely on mechanics. This is a lighter experience, and it doesn't really fit into the kind of games I usually rate that highly, but just the amount of fun I've gotten out of it because of the way it works and the way it builds, just overall a strong game that I highly recommend.
I'm not rating yet, but I would agree with the 4.5.
Yeah. I
wouldn't give it a 5.
Yeah,
but it's pretty up there.
It's a great game,
especially when you consider price, which is something I always think about.
It is, and the thing, I usually don't really bring price into reviews unless it's on the high or low end of the spectrum. It's got to be really extreme in terms of how much I think how cheap I think it is, or how expensive. Yeah, this is a solid game. Game.
Yeah.
As far as other game recommendations, I'll go ahead and recommend, if you're looking for another light gateway, gateway legacy game, a good experience overall. Sagrada Legacy from Floodgate Games is going to give you the familiar gameplay of Sagrada, but also in a very light and accessible box and experience that I think is also a lot of fun. And if you enjoy this, you'll probably enjoy that.
Were you doing another recommendation?
No, I wasn't going to. I was going to leave. See, I mean, I
got 2 others.
Oh, you got 2 others. Well, then fine. I'll give another one.
Go for it.
If you're looking for more of a Polyomino experience, my other favorite Polyomino game is going to be Baron Park. Baron Park continuously holds up for me. It's also a game that's on the lighter side, but it just brings me so much fun and enjoyment that I think that, particularly with the expansion, I think the expansion further elevates the experience. But even without the expansion, I think Baron Park is just one of my favorite legacy games. Polyomino games.
And Baron Park's also on BGA.
Yes.
This is also on BGA. I don't know if we've said that. We say it all the time, though. I would say my recommendations for Polyomino games, which is something that I have been loving lately. There's I Love Cats Explorinja. Specifically, the Explorinja is an absolutely perfect game. Again, that's another one that's in a very affordable price point. Do yourself a favor and pick up that game. And then another great Polyomino that's similar to this, which would be like, together, is Patchwork. So that one I think is very similar, but again, you'll be able to flip the tiles. And then for something that gives you a legacy type feel, it's not a legacy game, but I was thinking like with the envelopes, Decorum, which is another Floodgate game.
That is true.
But with like the idea of I can't wait for the next scenario. What's the next one going to be? What's this going to show me? I think that also gave me like a very similar feel.
Sometimes that kind of concept of envelopes or unlocks, they give you that push to like go through a game in a much faster way than you.
Here's the problem, right? Here's the problem. You got an envelope, right? You beat the scenario, you get to open this. You open this, you're like, oh my god, now I want to do this scenario. You beat that scenario, you know what you do? You open an envelope.
Are we going to film anything else after this, or just play through my city?
I was going to ask if you want to play with your rounds.
In any case, until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co.
I'm Professor Meg.
And have a good one.
Bye.